All right, so again, measures of central tendency continued. This is on page 51. We are going to be talking about how to find the mean, the median, modal class with group frequency tables. Okay, so unlike what was on that reddish color foldable that was just dealt with regular frequency tables, not group ones, just regular ones, you're able to find the mode by looking for what? How do you find the mode in a regular frequency table?
You just look at the frequency and just find the ones you want.
Look at the one that shows them the most often, the one with the what? What'd you say?
The highest number in the chart.
The highest number in the frequency column. Okay, that's how we found the mode. All right. We could list them all out, but that would just be, again, we're looking for the faster way. Okay. You're able to find the median. We went over this already in the pod. What was the formula to find the median? N plus 1 divided by 2. And then we were able to find the mean, which again we did in the pod by adding up all the values, dividing by the total number, and then we were good. But with a group frequency table, it's a tad bit different because you don't know the specific values that fall in each one of those intervals, right? We don't know any of those, okay? So instead of actually finding a mean, we're going to be finding an estimate of the mean. Okay, so it's almost like we're going to be kind of like rounding a little bit. We won't be able to find an exact mean because, again, we do not have specific values. Instead of it being one number for the mode, we have classes, we have intervals, we have groups. So it's going to be a modal class that you're going to find. The median is still found the same way, so you don't have to worry about that. But the modal class is going to be the group or the class interval that has the largest frequency. Just like you found the mode on that red color foldable by looking for the one that had the largest frequency. It's the same concept. But this time, instead of it being a number, it's going to actually be a class, an interval. And then to find the mean, what we're actually going to do, because it's an estimate, it's not an exact, the exact mean, but it's an estimate of the mean, we're going to take the frequencies and multiply them by their corresponding midpoints in each class, add them all up, and then divide by our total frequency. So again, Fi represents the frequency, Fx represents the midpoints of each of the classes, of each of the groups, of each of the intervals, okay? That's why it's an estimate. You're finding the midpoint of each, and then multiplying by its corresponding frequencies, add them all up, and then divide by the total frequency that we have, okay? So your first example is the one that has the table talking about time and frequency. That's example 1. We're going to do all 3 examples. They're all going to go on page 51. So, no. In IB, you're not going to have this extra column there for you to do, different things, for you to do your work, okay? This is me just kind of outlaying it nicely for you. It's the first example. I want to make sure everyone can follow along, all right? But the other 2 examples that we have are more of like the types of questions that you're going to get, okay? But here we go. We have the time in seconds taken to complete 200 bouts of sumo wrestling shown to us with the respective frequencies. Now, at the bottom it says calculate the modal class. Again, the modal class is the class or group that has the largest frequency. What group is that? What class is that? What interval is that?
0 to 40. No.
20 to 40. So how it's written is how you should write it as well. Okay, do not deviate from what they give you. Okay, so the modal class is between 20 inclusive and 40 exclusive seconds, because these are measured in seconds. So it's easy. It's a write down problem. The modal class will always be a write down. The mode will always be a write down question. Little work. But the mean, however, that's where the points are really going to come in. Okay? So, we need 2 things when we're finding the mean, an estimate of the mean. What are those 2 things? We need the frequency. And we need the midpoint of each class, okay? So, we need to figure out what is the midpoint of each class. What is the midpoint? What's the number in the middle between 0 and 20? It is 10. What about for the second class between 20 and 40? 30. Now, if you're like, where are these numbers coming from? All we're doing is we're just taking 0 plus 20, dividing it by 2. Or we're taking 20 plus 40 and dividing it by 2. That's how we're finding the midpoint. Okay? The third class. The fourth class.
70.
And let's keep going.
90.
Keep going.
110.
Uh-huh.
130.
Keep going.
150.
150. Okay? So we need the midpoints, which we now have. And we need the frequencies, which are already given to us. And then what do we need to do with those after we multiply them? So we're going to multiply F and XI, which represent our frequencies and our midpoints, together. If you do not have a calculator out, you are going to need it today, not just for this, but for what we do later. Okay? What's 37 times 10? 370. 62 times 30. Okay? Help me out. Give it to me just as the numbers. Read them straightforward. The next one, the third class.
2300.
Awesome. The next one.
1750.
Go ahead and finish the other three. If you're unsure, that is an 11. That is an 11. For that fifth class, that is an 11. Go ahead and figure out the other four. What's the next class, the fifth class? 11 times 90.
990.
9 times 110.
990.
6 times 130.
780.
And the last one.
600.
600. So we've multiplied all of them. Now we have to actually add them up. That will give us the total. That will give us the numerator of our mean. So add all these numbers up. What you get for your numerator? Read it out for me. 9640?
Yeah.
Okay. So that is our numerator to find the estimate of our mean. That is the sum of all the frequencies times the midpoints. Now we're going to divide it by our total frequency. What is our total frequency? 200. A lot of times they'll give you your total frequency as the last, in the last row of your frequency. They'll give it sometimes to you at the beginning. Okay, but if you don't have it given to you, you can always add up your frequencies to get the total. And so we're just going to divide 9640 by 200 to get, and that is the average or the mean time about for these 200 bouts of sumo wrestling. Just like that. So it's just another extra step to find the mean by doing the midpoints and multiplying them by your frequencies. Yes?
This may be a dumb question, but is there like a unit for like the mean and all? Like, do you have to put a unit?
The unit will be the like the X value of your table. So in this case, it will be the time, which is seconds.
Okay.
We're good. Let's look at the second example, which is the one talking about the speeds of vehicles passing under a bridge. Okay. This one is not a table drawn out for you. Okay. You don't necessarily have to do a table. A table is just a clean way to organize all your information. Okay? So looking at that data, what is the modal class? 70 to 80. And we're going to write exactly how it's given to us in the table. Don't deviate from it. Now we have to find an estimate of the mean speed of the vehicles. Again, we need two things. What do we need? We need frequencies, midpoint, and we actually need the total frequency. That's true. Do we have the total? No, we got to add up all these frequencies to get our total. That's going to be the denominator of to find our mean. What is that total? 60? Confirmation? Okay. So the total frequency is 60. That's my denominator. We are halfway there. What about our midpoints? What's the midpoint between 60 and 70?
65.
So I'm going to take 65 and I'm going to multiply it by my frequency. What's the midpoint of 70 and 80? And that gets multiplied by 15, and I'm going to continue this process. What's my next midpoint? 85. Multiply it by that frequency. Like I'm doing like that full numerator, okay? This is another way. Instead of actually creating a table, we basically are going to take each midpoint and multiply them by their respective frequencies. So it's like I'm combining, just writing out the multiplication part as just one long addition. You don't have to do this. You have both ways. You have the table way, and now you'll have this way. What's the next midpoint? The next midpoint. Keep going. And the last one? That's going to be my numerator. This is how we show our work here, folks. This is how we show our work. So we're going to go ahead and multiply that out, get a numerator. And I do want you to kind of find the numerator just in case our numerators don't match. I want to make sure that we're good. Everyone is successful in typing these numbers in. What was my numerator? What did you get? Would you read the numbers off? 5300. Yes? Divided by 60, and you get your estimate of your mean, which is 88.3 SKM per hour. There you go. Easy, right? You just got to remember, find your midpoints, multiply them by your frequencies, add them all up, and that's your numerator. You divide it by your total frequency, which is your denominator, and then you'll get your mean. All right, this last one is the results of a geography test for 25 students. They're given in this diagram. What is this diagram of? It is a histogram, okay? Remember, histograms were drawn when you had a group frequency table, okay? When you had a group frequency table. So even though there is no table, you technically could recreate a table if you wanted to, okay? What would be my first class if I wanted to recreate this table? 10 to 20. What would be the frequency of that particular table? It'll be 2, because it would be however high up that bar goes, okay? So we got our grade, and we got our frequency, which basically represents our number of students. What would be the second class? 20 to 30. What's the frequency of that? What would be the third class? 30 to 40. What's the frequency? And you could continue this process out, okay? So if it asked you to recreate a table, you could, just by pulling that information from the graph. But is it asking us to recreate the table? No, it's asking us to find our modal class, which is the one that shows up the most, the highest bar, right? What class is that? 40 to 50 with a 6, with a frequency of 6. So that actually would have been my next class if I kept my table going. But now I need to estimate the mean. I want you guys to do that on your own. But just to make sure we're good. What's the midpoint of the first class?
15.
Okay, good stuff. All right, so estimate your mean. What was your numerator? 1295. What was your denominator?
25.
It even told you right here. There were 25 students who took the test. If you weren't sure, you could have counted up all your frequencies. So 1295 divided by 25 is your mean. 51.8. Can't really say grade because that makes no sense. No, it's not a percentage, but that would be the. I guess at that point you would write a sentence to say the mean grade would be about 51.8. You really can't say grade points. It's even about points. Because we don't know if it's a percentage or not, so it could just be points. But then there you go. Questions on that? That's how you do it by hand. Okay? This is the work that's associated when you do this by hand. Okay? When you find the mean, the modal class, and the median of your data from what you collected, you're going to show it to me by hand when I ask for it. Okay? But you can always check your work. And I'll show you how to do that in your calculator. Everybody, calculators out. Okay? Calculators out. We are in the statistics unit. So what button do you think we're going to press? Stat. Stat is located 2 buttons to the right of the alpha button. Now, once you press stat, this comes up. Edit. And anything in that is where basically it's going to be dealing with your list, your data that you actually type in. Okay? Calc is when you're going to perform any type of different, when you wanted to give you some information back, that's where you're going to go. Test, if you want to run any type of test on your data, which there are several tests out there, we're only going to talk about one in this particular class, it's going to be under there. But the main thing is we got to put in our data first. So under edit, and literally edit, we're going to click enter. And you're going to have L1, L2, L3, and so on and so forth. Raise your hand if you do not see L1, L2, or anything like that. And you did go to edit, you clicked enter on it. Okay.
It has inequalities.
Stat, and you went to edit? Purple? Okay. All right. Something is... Okay. I was going to go over this anyway. So let's say there's data in your list. Okay? And you want to get rid of it. Now, I'm going to get rid of L2 because technically this is the data already because I did it with second period, right? But let's say it's some other problem that you did from a while ago and you want to get rid of your data. You're not going to delete it. When you delete it, you literally delete the column. And no, you cannot try to redo everything with just an L1 and an L3. No, you literally need L1, L2, L3, L. It's not going to work, okay? So let's say you accidentally do this. And it is going to happen. It's happened to everyone at some point because you forget. You're rushing, right? To get it back, you press stat. You go down to option 5, which says set up editor. And then you just click enter. And what it does is it basically reformats your list and brings L2 back. Or L1, whichever one you delete. Technically, you could delete 3, 4, and 5. It really doesn't matter. We just need 1 and 2. Okay? So, type in your data. L1 is going to be your X values, so your grades. L2 is going to be your frequency. And literally to type in data, all you're literally going to do is type in the number, click enter. Type in the number, click enter. Here, I'll change this one to show you, okay? See, look at that. Type in the number and enter. So type in all of your midpoints in L1. Type in all your frequencies into L2. Go ahead and do that now. Let's say you make a mistake, okay? Let's say you accidentally typed in 40 instead of 45. All you got to do is literally move the arrow back up and just type the number that you want to fix it, okay? It's like an override. It'll be fine. Don't worry about clearing or deleting it. If you literally want to clear something out, you press clear and you hit enter. That's how you clear out the entire column, okay? Now I got to put all these back. Your columns should always be even. You should have the same number of entries in both columns. If you don't, you're going to end up with the error message. Okay, so let's double check. Everybody have their math right? Okay. Now you could have also done this with your the normal frequency tables. Okay, then you would just use the regular X values. All right, I didn't show it to you on the video because I want to make sure that I was here if we had any issues. Sound good? All right. Now we are going to actually find this information like the mean or the median. or other things that are going to come up in our future. Second mode quits out of any program that you're in. If you're in y equals, second mode gets you out of y equals. Okay? So we're going to go back to stat. We're going to go over to calc. And we're going to go to 1-bar statistics. Okay? Now, if your calculator does not look like mine, it is okay. If your calculator looks like mine, I still need you to listen, because you do not know what calculator you're going to end up with on the day of your exam, and you need to know both ways. I show both ways, not just for the folks who have this type of calculator, this type, is so that everybody knows. Raise your hand if your calculator did not look like mine. Perfect. So everyone, make sure you're listening. Right now you have 1-bar stat sitting on your screen, right? Now we had 2 columns of information, correct? We want the calculator to take both columns, and we want them to do all the work with both columns. So you need to make sure that the calculator knows it needs to do L1 and L2. So what you're going to do is you're going to press the second button, and then you're going to press the 1 button. When you do that, doesn't the L1 pop up beside that? You want it to have an L1 there. But we had 2 lists, correct? So we need to type in a comma. Comma is located right above your 7 button. Okay? Now we need the second list, which was L2, right? You're going to press the second button, and then you're going to press the 2 button. And L2 should show up. Okay? Does everyone's screen look like mine? Well, the ones who calculated did not look like mine. Does it look like what I have up here? If yours looks like mine, you're not going to do what I'm writing right now. Okay? You're going to hold off. You're just going to listen. You're just going to pay attention. Okay? So if yours looks like this, you don't start typing anything in. Because if you do not put in L1 and L2, you are not going to get the correct answer. It's only going to find information for L1. It's not even going to take into account that there's frequencies associated with it. So you have to do L1, L2 every time. Okay? So when you click enter, you'll get all the information. So for those whose calculators do not look like mine, click enter, and then just chill and listen. Okay? So for those whose calculators look like mine, you have list, frequency list, and calculate, correct? Your list represents your X values, represents that first column in your table, okay? That's what we typed into L1, correct? Now me, I accidentally pressed the comma button because this is a touch screen, so I got to put L1 back in. I do it the same way. I press the second button, I press the 1 button, and L1 shows up. And if you look, there's a blue L1 right there to let you know that when you press the second button and 1, an L1 pops up. Under frequency list, you need L2. So if your calculator is not showing an L2 under frequency list, press second and then press 2. And then you just have to hit calculate. And if you look really quickly, it's going to show exactly what it showed on the people whose calculators did not look like this. If you watch very quickly. There, you saw it? It was there for like a split second. All right. Now everyone's screen should look like this. If your screen says 50, you forgot L2. Okay? But everyone said the first number says 51.8, right? Yeah. As it should. That's what we found by hand. That symbol is the calculator notation for me. So that's the way you can check yourself to see if you did a good job. Okay? Now if you look a little further down, you see where it says N equals 25. Then we have 25 pieces of data. So then we're good. You scroll a little further down, you see where it says MED. That represents the median. A lot of times when it says find the median, it's a write-down problem. Well, you can type that into your calculator, do this process, and get your median without having to go through the n plus 1 divided by 2. Especially if it's a write-down problem. It's only worth 1 point. So why not just pull it up on your calculator? Questions? Or anything calculator related?
Yes.